What is up, NCMA Boston fans and faithful contracts professionals, all of you fine people out there? My name is Adam Cohen. I'm the Vice President of Broadcasting here at NCMA Boston. Welcome to yet again another installment of our Meet the Speaker series. Today, we're going to be getting ready for our December 2023 event with special guest Mark Hijar, founder of Procure Links LLC. I hope I pronounced your last name right.
Yeah, Hijar, that's fine.
Excellent.
Whatever.
All right. Well, thank you again for joining me here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Adam. My name's Mark. I'm the founder of Procure Links. I have supported more than 140 CPSRs at this point.
That's a lot of CPSRs.
It's a lot. Yeah. We average about 10 or more a year. So I got my start doing CPSRs as corporate counsel for a defense contractor. And then when that company was bought, I left and started doing consulting. So most of what I do is CPSR related, and all the kind of attachments and accoutrement that's around that, price analysis, evaluative documentation of all sorts. Most of my focus right now with my clients is on price analysis, commerciality, and source selection. My approach, and I guess this is something to put out there. I do not play nice with DCMA. I just don't. I don't. They don't know how to run a contractor purchasing system. They often don't read the rules and the regs correctly, and they both misapply and overapply things that only apply to the government to contractors. So one of the things that I think is really important is making sure that contractors standardize system performance in accordance with what the regs actually say, and then defend it. And you get a lot of opportunities to defend your system during a CPSR, a contractor purchasing system review. So I always stress to my clients that they should take those opportunities. Most of my clients are in the $1 billion plus range, both because of the nature of the review and the maturity of companies who decide they don't want to just do what the government tells them to do. They want to actually think about it, push back when necessary, and negotiate, because that's available. So you might as well do it. So that's kind of what I help my clients do, is efficient, effective compliance and avoiding that pitfall in our industry that tells us that if it's not complicated, it's not compliant. That's incorrect. All right. Easy stuff can be compliant. You just got to know. You just got to know when to hit the off button. So that's what I help clients do.
And so that's, like I've worked at big companies, medium-sized companies, small companies, like DCMA. I feel like you always have that like give and take relationship with them. DCMA, DCA, like you want to make sure everyone's happy. But that's kind of the reason also for this webinar. And I've like buried the lead. The name of the webinar that you are going to be talking on is CPSR Mythbusters Price Analysis Edition. So again, trying to debunk the myths. Like we as contracts and subcontract professionals, we don't ever want to get in a head-on collision with DCMA. We want to work alongside of them to make sure that no one's overclocking anything, no one's overdoing anything, but let's form more of a friendship, more of a relationship. But I'm like you were just kind of saying, like being able to take a different approach to them is not coming at them in a negative way, but also coming at them in a, hey, this is how we're doing things. I've done plenty of these. I've worked with enough of you all. Like this is actually what the rules and regulations say. And I feel like sometimes when we're in any job, we get in the weeds so much. Sometimes it's like, oh, we did like 10 steps too many that we're so used to doing. We didn't need to do them. So what actually got you into contracts?
That's a good question. So I got out of law school, didn't want to be a lawyer. So I ended up, it was during the internet boom back in the 90s. So I started working with a software company in DC, and kind of found my way into government contracts kind of sideways. I ended up working as a subcontract administrator. And then the company I was working for was trying to go public. So we hired general counsel. And I was basically, at that point, I was overseeing negotiation of all the agreements for the company, TA, subcontracts, NDAs, all that. Helping with export stuff, overseeing the IP portfolio. So my boss, who was general counsel, said, go take the bar, quit messing around. I want to hire another lawyer. You're it. And if you don't want to do it, you're never going to get a promotion at this company again. And I hope you're making COLA raises. And I was like, okay. So I got bullied into being corporate counsel, which is kind of a weird way to get there, right? you know, it was fun. And then the company wanted to go and get their approved purchasing system because we acquired a company in Huntsville and everybody in Huntsville has one and it looked like a fun toy. So our execs were like, let's go get one. And no one wanted to do it. So I volunteered and took the company through their first 2 CPSRs successfully.
That's awesome.
And yeah. And so that was it. And then when the company got sold, I had a choice to make about staying there and moving into contracts or going out on my own. And I kind of decided it was time to do something different. So went out there and I kind of like unofficially did an apprenticeship, I guess, with a consulting company, kind of learning. So as corporate counsel, I was not paid to be nice. I guess I'd put it. I was kind of the goalkeeper / prison guard, making sure that, you know, things didn't go off the rails and all that. And I was the guy that went in when execs were, you know, doing their thing and just told them no. And it didn't matter if they liked me or not because I didn't care. Now that's not the attitude to bring to a consulting gig, right? So it's a lot different. So,
right.
I needed to learn a lot more about, you know, what it means to talk to a client, how you deal with issues with clients. My abrupt nature was no longer welcome. So I was glad I did that. And I've been doing my own thing for 12 years now. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So before we get into some of the other questions I have, I just kind of want to expand on something. You know, we're talking about CPSRs and everything else. For anyone that might be new listening to this, that sees that CPSR title and it's like, okay, I really want to attend it. Can you just break it down for us? It's a 2-part question. What is a CPSR?
Yep.
Why is it so important to anyone that's getting one done?
Got it. Good question. So CPSR is a contractor purchasing system review. So there are 6 business systems that DCMA and DCAA audit. DCAA audits estimating system, accounting and billing systems, and material management and accounting systems. DCMA, so basically DCAA handles stuff that happens outside of contract performance, right? During your proposal, and then after the fact, when you're figuring out if you got paid the right amount of money and all that good stuff, right? So
finalizing rates,
but it's all administrative. DCMA, the Defense Contract Management Agency, works on contract performance related things. So they handle EVMS, they handle property, and they handle purchasing systems. So the CPSR process is actually in FAR Part 44, and it's also included in the DFARs in 252, 244, 7001. So if you have a prime contract that has the consent clause in it, the clause that makes you go out and get a mother may I permission from your KO before you place certain types of subcontracts, it's 52, 244, 2. If you've got that clause in your prime contract, then you could be subject to a contractor purchasing system review. And that's in I of that clause. So reason why it's so important. Oh, and one more thing. There's 24 elements in 7001 and C of that clause. There's 24 elements that are audited during a CPSR or reviewed. They mostly revolve around evaluative documentation, which is your source selection process, price analysis, commerciality determinations, small business utilization, things like that. And then the rest of it is, there's kind of 3 portions to it. That portion, there's kind of foundational documentation, requisitions, lead time, how you're placing your contracts. And then the big daddy part of it is public law compliance. So debarment certifications, CAS, truthful cost of pricing, which I'll always call TINA. You can't make me stop.
It is TINA.
It is TINA.
It's TINA.
Contracting plans, Buy American Act, all that good stuff, right? So it's a kind of a 3-phase review. And the idea behind it is that the government does not have access to your suppliers, right? They don't have access. They don't have privity of contract with your subcontractors.
Correct.
So the CPSR allows DCMA to review how you're making those first tier awards, and if you're complying with the regulations and guaranteeing a best value price to the government. So and if you pass, you don't get to get consent anymore. You no more than may I's for the most part. You get to go run free, source, and all that good stuff. The reason why it's so important, it didn't used to be that important to everybody. The purchasing system process was originated back in 1984 to cover manufacturers mostly, because that's all we had back then. We didn't have service contractors in 1984, right? As government contracting has evolved and progressed, and it kind of came to a head during the Iraq and Afghanistan war, the government realized that they have this tool that they can use to validate pricing during performance, to make sure that suppliers are being treated both fairly, but also with some rigor. And so they vastly expanded the CPSR process in 2012 to include less kind of plant-based manufacturing stuff and more kind of pricing and more general things that apply to everybody. So now, right now, if you have an IDIQ contract, an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract, and DoD is putting any money behind it, you will have evaluation criteria tied to that contract that will address your business systems. Again, estimating property purchasing, EVMS, not so much material management and accounting, because that is very much a manufacturing thing. So a lot of sort of contracts don't have that, but accounting and billing. So even CIOSP 4 that came out. CIOSP 4, I was a contract administrator for CIOSP 2, right? Back when it was like $1 billion cap, something like that, right? CIOSP 4 has a $50 billion ceiling value, and it's because DoD is pumping a bunch of money into it to do health and welfare stuff, right? So now that if you look at even 3 to 4, 3 had no mention of business systems. It's an NIH, it's an ITAC contract, right? It's got some VA stuff on it, but it's mostly health and human services. Not anymore. Now that DoD is in play, you got to talk about your purchasing system, and that's true for all the GSA, IDIQ, GWACs, Oasis, Alliant, Polaris, Astro, all of the ones coming out. If there's any DoD money on it, you're going to have a purchasing system. When they recompete FedSim, you're going to have a purchasing system approval. So now, if you want to play on these contracts, doesn't matter if you're small or large, you got to be able to talk to your purchasing system, acceptability and approval. So it's become a very big deal to just about everybody who wants to do work with DoD.
Yeah, well, that is absolutely huge and informative. So thank you for that, Mark. Appreciate that. And again, we here at NCMA Boston, we're trying to make all these tools and trainings and broadcasts like this, which is something brand new. I know really hasn't been done before.
Sure.
It's really just to get everyone involved, Mark. And speaking of NCMA overall, have you been involved with NCMA before? And if so, what do you like about NCMA? And thank you as well for the CPSR purchasing. Even more of a reason to come and register for this thing. I'll tell you about it later.
Yeah, I'm actually on the board of advisors this year. So I'm actually
awesome.
Yeah, so I'm fairly involved in it. I guess you could say I'm involved in NCMA. I've been associated with NCMA for years now, and have been tapped to do a lot of the kind of regional. And so I've done the last few World Congresses. I just did GCMS.
I was just there.
Yeah, SubCon. I'm probably going to be at Nexus in March. So they kind of wheel me out to kind of come do training. People seem to like it, so I guess they keep having me do it.
I can just see this image of them just coming to your house, getting a dolly and taking you out of your house and rolling you into the event.
I just put me up there. I'll start talking. It'll be fine. So I've been fairly involved at the national level. I do help out with regional events as much as I can. I've done stuff this year for Dulles Corridor, Space Coast, and Chicagoland. So
awesome.
And it's basically if people need a speaker, I'm happy to do it. But also I do enjoy just kind of helping people out with some of this stuff, because there's a lot of what I would call unintentional misinformation out there and disinformation. So it's not like people are trying to make this harder. They just know how to do it, and they don't want to change, because if they change and it's wrong, they don't want to. And I get that. They don't want to get the blame for it, right? It's really hard to innovate in this industry. It is, right? So in order to innovate, you got to have someone who can tell you what to do and how to do it and do it right, and that it's worked before. So that's kind of what I enjoy doing, is talking to people, and they'll bring stuff and we can talk through it and really read the regs and really talk about them and really figure out where we really stand on it. Having people tell you what the rules are, it's much different from reading the rules yourself. And so that's what I try to help people do.
Because I'm sure you know this too. The rules are as black and white as they are, but there can be situations that are a gray area.
Sure.
For example, let's say intellectual property. I always said if I wanted to get into law after being in this field for so long, I'd want to get into patent law or IP law. It just seems like so fun. You could just literally go back and forth and just have a great debate.
Well, now with AI, there's a lot of questions I have about how AI is going to be handled. Like, for example, if I have an a truly AI enabled platform that can rewrite its own code, and I submit it to the government on a commercial basis, right? So they get restricted rights. What happens to the code after AI rewrites it during performance? Who owns that? So there's a lot of questions we're going to have to answer real quick about how AI is going to work in the government space.
Yes, very much so.
Are you going to have multiple use rights apply to the same platform? You might.
Yeah.
But the FAR doesn't allow for that. So, because it gets designated at the time of award, right? So,
yep. Are
we going to be walking around with platforms that AI have enabled based on government performance that are still owned by the contractor, or is the government going to try? It's going to be a very interesting area of law. It's going to be a lot of lawsuits, so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. As we heard at GCMS, or at least one of the ones I was in, the AI genie is out of the bottle and you can't put it back in.
Oh, we're working on, we're working on, we have audit software that we own and built and that we use with our clients, and we're actually working on some AI enabled. Right now, it's like an RFP. It's kind of cool, actually. It's an RFP tool that like you can feed it an RFP, and then it'll go tell you who the prime contractors who are working on it, who their teams were at the first tier, what the funding was, what the labor categories associated with it were, and kind of build like a business intel profile of your potential competitors. So we're working on that. There's a lot of stuff the AI can do, because everything government related is open source, right? So it's all got open API. You can plug your own platform into SAM.gov and FPDS and GSA Calc, and it's a matter of just manipulating and accessing and manipulating the data in a way that's useful to you. And that's where AI is going to be a big help. There's a lot of stuff that contractors aren't doing because it's so labor intensive, and so a lot of that stuff, filing stuff like FAFATA reports, that should all be something you don't even think about. It just happens. So that's kind of what we're working on my end, is developing AI platforms that actually do true AI. There's not a lot of true AI in our industry right now. I'll just tell you, like, it's not really AI. It's barely machine learning. It's a lot of filters and stuff like that. But a lot of people are calling stuff AI, and people don't know enough to say it's not. So that's the thing that we're working on.
Machine learning, AI, it's
IoT, or is it just an algorithm you wrote, right? Because
exactly,
algorithmic. That's all it is, right? So making sure that we're using terms correctly is also going to be a big challenge going forward.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're sitting there negotiating something, or if something's in some sort of solicitation, the proper language needs to be used. All right, so I feel like I'm just watching the time here. I'm like, I feel like, almost 18 minutes into this, we kind of already heard the answer to this next question, but I want to ask it anyway.
Sure.
If you could name one thing in contracts that you really like, what is it?
I think like putting together the puzzle. I really like, when things pop and you need to apply regs in a way you've never done before, or you need to create something that complies with the regs that's not been done before. I've had some good experience and fun, kind of creating new source justifications that now people are using, creating price analysis approaches that now are kind of becoming like part of the industry that not everybody knows that I did, but I do. So when I see it, I'm like, I like that. Being able to help people solve problems that are solvable in ways that are easy to implement. That's really what I like. Because, you can do it the hard way, right? Or, but the easy way is always, I'm an inherently lazy man. So I like easy. I like simple. I like to know when I'm done. And that's what I really like doing, is kind of eliminating kind of the extra effort and kind of narrowing it down, because this stuff's hard anyway, and the work's hard, and we all work long hours. And the one thing you don't want to do is to spend time on stuff you don't need to do, right? So that's what I try to do, is to try to lean everything down and make it so that people have time to do what they're doing, and that they're not doing unnecessary stuff, because nobody likes that. So that's kind of my thing I like about contracts, is figuring out the easy way, but the compliant way at the same time.
I love it. Like you said, putting together those puzzle pieces.
Yep.
All right. So as we wrap things up here for our Meet the Speaker interview here with Mark, I got to ask, we have this event coming up here. We're recording this on November 16th. Your event is coming up on December 13th, 2023. What is something that all of the viewers out there, what can people expect if and when they come to this event?
Well, a lot of just kind of straight talk about some stuff you're probably doing that you don't need to do anymore. There's kind of 2 sections to it. So, well, 3 sections. The first section is me talking about price analysis, kind of an overview of it, not getting real deep into it, but going over the 7 techniques, talking about when to use them, how to use them, and then jumping right in and talking about the 2 types of myths. Contractors have myths that they impose on themselves. And then there's the myths that the government imposes during audits. And when I say myth, basically what I'm talking about are, I have 5 different sources of these myths that I have, but it's always stuff like misreading a reg, misapplying a different part of the FAR to a contractor because we only have to comply with 52 and 252. The rest of the FAR is not for us, right? So that's part of it. Also, just kind of, we've all heard some of this stuff. We've all heard like, well, if you've got an LPTA and one of them is 30% less than the next lowest bid, then it's automatically not technically compliant. I don't know where that came from. I don't know who made that up. I don't know why people do it. Doesn't make any sense to me. We're going to talk about that. So stuff like that, the 80-20 rule on a bomb doesn't exist. There is no 80-20 rule on a bomb. You don't have to review 80% of the bomb. No one said that. It's not in the FAR. What is the rule? That's what we're going to talk about, right?
Love
it. A lot of this stuff is people putting stuff together because no one really told them how to do it, and then it worked. And so that's what we're doing now. And that's great. But let's really look at it. Let's go back and crack it open and make sure we're doing it right, and we're doing it because we have to, not because it's what we've always done. And that's the worst reason to do anything.
I was in subcontracts for over 5 years. Matter of fact, I started another, temp job to help out another company. They're having someone leave. They need someone to pick up the work. I'm like, great. I've got the experience ready to go.
Yeah.
I can resonate with this on price analysis, on cost analysis, on all the compliance, the rules, the regulations. But it's like you said, there's myths with what companies and contractors come up with. And then there's, like we talked about earlier on in this, about what DCMA and all the ones going through these CPSRs, what they can do. So what is the truth? Let's get rid of some of the myths and what's the truth. That's what everyone can be expecting to hear. Obviously, we can't cover everything in an hour-and-a-half webinar, but we're going to be able, like you said, to get into price analysis and get into some other things.
Oh, yeah.
Any final thoughts you want to share with us today?
I'll give you a freebie. You can use GSA schedules for price analysis. I don't know what you all heard, but you can. That 2014 class deviation doesn't apply to contractors. So that's one thing we'll discuss. But that's a freebie. If you don't decide to go, listen to this. Keep using GSA for price analysis. You're good.
There you go.
But otherwise, I think it'll be fairly informative. I think it'll help people kind of start digesting some of these issues. And I think if you want to learn how to stop doing things the hard way, it might be a good one to attend.
I love it. I'm sure that'll be a lot of higher ups be like, wait, we could stop doing things the hard way? Really? We're going to have to get some higher ups in some of these companies to join us as well. So, sure. Mark, thank you so much for joining us here. First things first, we're going to plug this event before we sign on off here. So the event's going to be Wednesday, December 13th, 2023. It's going to be online. To find out where you can go to register, you got to head over to ncmaboston.org. Again, ncmaboston.org. It's going to be from noon to 1:30 p.m. It's a webinar. It's free. You pay for nothing. That makes managers and people with budgets very, very happy.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Free is always a good thing. Listen, GCMS was a ton of fun. Just think of being able to attend something free, but to have this kind of powerful, impactful information and not attend a conference, well worth the time, hour and a half. I intend on being there. Mark, you'll be there. Obviously, you're speaking.
I'll be there.
Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to do this. Any final thoughts you want to share before I send this off?
No, just look forward to seeing people there.
Excellent. Well, for Mark, I'm Adam. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure if you're interested in hearing any of the other speakers, if you're interested in having them at your events, make sure you check out the playlist. I have an entire Meet the Speaker series down here on YouTube. And starting in December or even next year, I'm going to have all this available on SoundCloud as well. Tons of fun stuff coming up here from my point of view here on broadcasting. Can't wait. Mark, thank you again. And we'll see you at the event.
Thanks for having me.